Pro runners are at the forefront of running technology, training and knowledge. Do they always train like that? No. They're a funny bunch, like we all are. But what I do know is that the interesting and quirky ways different pros train can teach us a thing or two about our own training. And we might not be able to run as fast as them, but there are definitely ways we can train like them. And you can subscribe like them too. You just click a little button.
Uh-oh, here we are, about to go on our easy run in the place that we're going to be living.
In a month.
That feels really weird to say, so we're going to take you on a bit of a tour. Right, are we ready?
Let's do it.
Look at this view. So you would have probably heard a lot about pro runners training at altitude because it's about pushing your body into an uncomfortable place. At altitude particularly, it's about going into an environment where there's less oxygen to try and make your body produce more red blood cells to carry more oxygen. That's the point behind it. And there are ways around it. If you saw the video about a year ago when I trained with Vlad Excel, he had an oxygen tent that he slept in to try and give himself the best benefits. But to be honest with you, it's quite expensive, prohibitively so, for most of us, right? So what can you do? In what ways can you push your body to get some adaptations? Well, how about training in heat? Because we live in a country where it's regularly 35 degrees Celsius, it's 90 to 100% humidity. But what we find is that when we get out of this environment and we race in, say, Chicago or New York or Boston, the heat is not a factor. Our body, in fact, has been forced to deal with the heat so much. It's got really, really good at dealing with temperature, at cooling your body down. Because one of the things that raises your heart rate whilst you're running is you're heating up. So in theory, right, if you train in heat, for example, on your holiday, lots of people stop training on their holiday. I'd argue that you should double down on your training on your holiday if you've gone to a hot country. Once you've done that, then your body starts to get good at cooling you down in races. And it's only a small gesture, but it's something, right? And they say that training in heat is poor man's altitude training. And you know what? I'm fine with that. Another thing the pros are really good at is running slower than us. And you might think, hold up, they're pros, they race so much faster, and they do. But the fact is, there's so much difference between what they would call their recovery easy runs and their actual racing pace that you'd be surprised. And I think we're not as good at doing what they do. So a good example is, if you give a Kenyan or an Ethiopian athlete an hour's recovery run, they'll actually see how little distance they could cover in that time, almost as a game. Whereas I bet if it was you or me, and you had an easy run to go out on, you might be well, certainly my thinking was, let's get this over and done with. Let's go at the top of my zone 2. So I'm still in zone 2, but I'm getting the run done. And that is just not the way to recover. The only reason I'm heavy breathing now is because I'm holding the phone. It's starting to hurt my arm. And I don't think it's an ego thing, actually. What I think it is we don't have time when we're working busy lives. You just don't have time to do that kind of stuff. Take your time. On the other side of that, you have to. I'm going to make a really big push for Berlin Marathon, that my easy runs are genuinely slow and easy, no time pressure, no distance pressure. Just do them and be able to talk like this.
It will not surprise anyone to know that pro runners train in more than just one pair of trainers, but it might be interesting to hear why, as there's more than one reason, and it's quite interesting for us as normal runners. You see, when a pro does a speed session, they may use a particular pair of trainers, perhaps something carbon plated to give a bit of extra speed, a bit more pop. Then they might do an easy run in a completely different pair, possibly without carbon plates, but more cushioning for the joints. And that might be the same when they do a tempo session. And then there's trail running, different again. But you'd expect them to use the same trainers for their easy runs, right? It would make sense that the legs get used to this type of trainer. Well, not quite. You see, for a start, and we'll speak more about this a bit later, most pro runners run more than one time per day. And even if both runs are easy runs, they still rotate their trainers. Some say it is to allow the foam cushioning to recover, and some say it is just a mindset thing. But whatever the reason, easy runs. But that has been shown in recent studies is that regular use, even easy runs, will reduce your injury risk significantly, and the reasoning makes sense. If you use different shoes with slightly different levels of stack height, which is essentially the cushioning, and the drop, which is the height difference from the heel to toe, then you are safely stressing your muscles, tendons and ligaments in slightly different ways, allowing them to become stronger over a range of patterns and not using any one foot position too much. That would cause overuse injury. It all makes sense, and if you need an excuse for more trainers, then there you go. And if you want the scientific equation for the amount of trainers you need to have, it is actually very simple. It's n plus 1, n being the number you already have. You're welcome.
Something that blew my mind when I found out about it, and it wasn't until recently actually, is just how little pro athletes, particularly the East Africans, spend running on what we would call road or tarmac. And I came to the beach to prove this point, so yes, they're not running on sand a lot, but the point is that 90 to 95% of runs from a lot of at least East African pro athletes, and I would venture a guess that most pro athletes try and do at least a bit of this, as you stay off the road, because that is the hardest impact force on the legs. So off-road running, trail running, East Africans call it korokonch, but it's, you know, like the gravelly dirt packed roads, lots of warm up and lots of diagonals on grass. But my eyes are burning from I've got lotion in them. Lots of all of that stuff with only 5 to 10%. That is so little on roads. Ask yourself, how much do you do on roads honestly, and is that proportionately causing more impact and affecting your joints? One thing that I find really interesting is how little elite athletes actually do static stretching. And you probably know static stretching is a good way to finish your run. Stand still, stretch your calves, stretch your hamstrings, stretch your quads. There's actually not that much evidence for that being a benefit to the running. So what you'll see elite athletes actually do is two very different things. What they actually do and what we should do. Can I just show you my camera person? What they actually do is you'll see that most pro athletes and elite athletes, and many actually amateur athletes, do a really good warm-up session with dynamic stretching, which is stretching whilst moving, and kind of drills that help their technique. And then after, rather than doing static stretching, they'll invest in a mobility, you're trying to follow me, they'll invest in a mobility routine rather than static stretching. While static stretching focuses on kind of the length of the muscle, mobility focuses on the range of movement around a joint. So as Mary's demonstrating nicely here, I don't know how the light is on that, is movement around the hip socket, movement around the knee joint, movement around the ankle joint. And arguably that will be more effective for your running, and it's certainly helped us hugely since we've done this regularly. So whilst I'm not saying don't do static stretching, we do it just because it's part of our routine. This must be a super weird angle. What I am saying is it's probably not as effective as mobility work and dynamic stretching with drills before running. But you don't have to not do it, we still do it. It's just you won't really see pros do it very often. Okay, we're actually back in Bangkok now. We've flown up from Phuket, and whilst I am definitely not doing this, I want to talk to you about another technique that pro runners have, which is doubles or sometimes even triples runs in a day. But I'm going to go out on our new, we bought these for our new life in Phuket, so I'm going to take you out on the ride with it because they're so exciting. Safety first. Okay, I don't even have to cycle while I'm doing this. So when we talk about doubles or triple runs, everybody kind of knows that pro runners double run most days. So they tend to get up in the mornings and then they'll run, and then they'll run in the afternoons as well. Sometimes different runs, like a speed session in the morning and an easy one in the afternoon. Sometimes just double recovery runs, just both easy run. And the idea behind it, well, at least for the double run days, is quite simple. It's that if you're running bigger volumes, if you're running 30 or 40k a day like a lot of pros are, then why not split it 20 and 20, and that keeps you safer. It stops you getting so tired that your movement patterns start breaking down and you might pick up an overuse injury. But also, there is a release, every time you exercise, there's a release of something called HGH, which is human growth hormone, which is essentially what the body uses to try and repair and rebuild stronger. So the theory goes also, you run twice, you get a double dose of HGH. So, although triples are rare, by the way, I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that pro runners do a lot of triples. The idea is that running in a pre-fatigued state, as in the first run is to fatigue you a little bit, is to deplete your glycogen stores, and then you run after that, it enhances and maximizes the training benefits. But, personally, doubles do just that job, and they're safer, and let's be honest, who has the time to do 3 runs in a day, right? So triples, not likely. Doubles, likely, and as safe for us as it is for the pros. It's a good way of, even if we're running less volume, we can split it and keep ourselves safe.
Oh, hey, you know what the other thing pro runners could be pro at? Sleep. But it's not for the reasons that you'd think, because I think anyone watching this video would know that getting a good amount of sleep, between 7 and 9 hours a night, is the goal. But it can't always be achievable on its own. But that's a given, right? We know that. You need more sleep if you're waking up tired. Probably most people need more sleep generally. But it's not the amount of sleep necessarily that pros focus on. It's the quality. So naps is one thing. I think we all know that even if we could grab a nap, we probably would, and pro runners are no different. But it's not even that. Again, when we go into quality, I'm talking about a story I heard about Team Sky from back in the day. When their cyclists, the Tour de France cyclists, were going around the world, Team Sky took all of their mattresses with them, individual mattresses, to guarantee a better night's sleep. I'm not stupid enough to say this is exactly what pro runners do. I'm pretty certain no pro runners do that. But anytime I go around the world on any holiday, when I take hold luggage, I take this bad boy at the very least. This pillow will guarantee me a far better night's sleep than any hotel pillow ever has done. But some other things that help guarantee our sleep: not using technology too close to bedtime. We have our phones in another room. Depending on where you are in the world, find a temperature that works for you in your room. Here it's got to be about 20 degrees with the air conditioning. Avoid eating or exercise too near to bedtime if you possibly can. And if you can manage all of that, you just might improve the quality of your sleep to aid your recovery and improve your sessions. Okay, here's the deal. If you learned something new, consider subscribing to the channel, but you're also gonna like this video, which is the 9 ways in which pro runners run faster for longer. See you next week.